and welcome back to another episode of Getting Started with Slack App Development, and actually the final episode of this little mini series. So throughout this series we've looked at how we can build a Slack app utilizing your local machine to host the app, building it in Node.js using Bolt for JavaScript to help us build apps quicker for Slack, and exposing our local host machine through ngrok so that you can actually test your app in a Slack workspace. I looked at doing this last video and I thought about what we could do to expand on it, because we looked at different events such as app home opened, utilizing slash commands, using modals and reacting on the data from sent in a modal back to the Slack app. And really now, the situations that you may come across really depend on business use cases, or if you're just practicing your own imagination. Combining different events, looking at things like unfurling URLs and reacting to files, all play on the principles that we've already covered. So really now the final step would be, how do you make something like this Getting Started with Slack App Development production worthy? You need to start thinking about hosting it on something other than your local machine, because that isn't scalable. It's not secure either. So how would you do that? You'd look at something like AWS or Google Cloud or something like that to host your apps, the functionality. So I'm no AWS expert, and I decided AWS has a free tier, so let's have a look at doing a video showing you how to do that. And I went onto YouTube, as we typically do, and tried to find out how to do that in a easy enough, user-friendly enough way for people getting started with Slack app development. And I came across this YouTube video. Now this is a YouTuber called Anton Putra, who is showing us here how to build a Slack app using Node.js, just like we have, hosting it on AWS using Lambda functions and saving data into a DynamoDB. Now, I went through this video. It's fantastic. It's really simple to follow, really easy to build and get on board with, and it leaves you with a couple of examples of how you can expand it and really start using your own use cases and scenarios. Now, instead of me replicating this video by Anton and almost ripping it off, because I definitely don't want to do that, I thought rather than teaching something on this last video, I would share this content of Anton's. Now, this video is fantastic. It takes you step by step of how to create a simple Node.js Salesforce Slack app, just like we have, and then utilizing Docker, making your own Docker image, uploading it to AWS in an elastic container repository, so that you can then utilize Lambda to trigger the functionality of your app, and exposing it through an AWS gateway. Now, Anton has some other great videos around AWS. There is another Slack app video that he has produced as well. So I absolutely encourage you to go and follow, subscribe and like Anton's videos. But effectively, when you follow this video through, you will end up building something like this. An app called Wally, which when you type an app mention, so you actually explore the app mention event, something like a to-do, a reminder, to do, watch this video. And what the Slack app will then do is save it to the AWS DynamoDB, utilizing the gateway, the API gateway, the Lambda function, spinning the function up using the Docker image in the elastic container repository, and then saving it to the database. That video I think is amazing, and you should definitely go and have a look at doing. Really briefly though, you end up going through things like creating a user in the IAM on AWS, getting the credentials and storing them on your local machine so that you can access AWS from the command line. You go through creating a role specific for Lambda and providing the correct policies, which you then also define in AWS to say what this user and what policy access they have, what they can do. So for example here, using giving access to CloudWatch so that you can create some logs, so you can actually debug. Things like access to DynamoDB, so you can actually create records within the database. You then look at how you use ECR to upload your Docker image with your different code base. You then look at how you create a Lambda function which utilizes that that image and attach a gateway to it. You then look at things like actually how you configure the gateway. For example, in this example that you go through on the video, you look at different stages and how you would restrict it, for example, to only post, because Slack apps only use post requests. You then dig into things like the log groups, so you can go and have a look at your Slack app and have a look at the different logs and see what's actually going on within those logs. You can see the different attributes there in the JSON payload. And then finally you go and have a look at building all that into your database table, and having a look at the records that are then inserted into your table. That allows you then to start thinking about different examples of what you may want to do with your database table. Do you want to app home opened, display a list of all the records that are on the table? That could be a scenario that you want to then try and explore, So there's lots of different things that you could then explore on the back of this. But this gives you the starting point to start making this getting started with Slack app from your local environment into an actual production worthy and production ready app. You've got the free tier of AWS, which you can now start learning and playing on. You can start, like I say, tying together different things. Your modal perhaps can insert more than just the one to-do field onto the database table. You could collect lots of different data. You could maybe perhaps have a modal which has some filter criteria and returns you a result of different records in that table based on your filter criteria. And the filter is submitted to your Lambda function, which takes the filter criteria and then produces the correct query for the database. These are things that you can start thinking of now, building upon what we've gone through, the basics, and building on them now to practice your skills and even produce those production worthy apps for your business. Because for example, that database table, you might already have something. You might already have a database somewhere, your own servers on AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, wherever these databases are. You don't want your users to have access to those databases directly, and they should never have really access to them. You want to provide an interface, and maybe you've got an old custom web app that isn't scalable anymore. Your developers no longer are in the business that first created it, so it's a pain to update, and you want to move your business into the digital HQ of Slack. And this is exactly why you would look at building a Slack app to access these databases and create these functions. So I hope this brief final video was useful. I didn't want to replicate an amazing piece of content that's already out there, but what I did want to do was share this content and give you an overview of what you're going to learn in this final piece of really useful information. And now to spark some ideas about what you can do with Slack app development. What I do want to say is, before we leave this video, is thank you for following this getting started with Slack app development journey with me. And I appreciate all the views and likes and subscribes and shares that you've given me over this course of this mini project. Stay tuned to my YouTube channel for any other future mini-series. They may be more on Slack, and there may be some more on other Salesforce technologies, such as MuleSoft, Tableau, all the other different stacks, Marketing Cloud, etc. Until next time, thank you very much, and this has been the Getting Started with Slack App Development playlist.